Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope this message finds you well. I hope you had a fabulous weekend. I just wanted to come on here and share a thought that I had over the weekend that I think may be helpful to those of us, I raise my hand all the time, who may be experiencing some places where we want to grow, change, transform. I had an epiphany when I was working out this weekend. For a long time, I have been saying that I gained weight, which I did, because of the pandemic. Oh, I got way too, and that seems to be something that I've heard a lot of people say that, the pandemic made them fat, because of the pandemic this, because of the pandemic that. And I realized this morning, well, not this morning, yesterday morning, Sunday morning, during my yoga practice, during Savasana, that the pandemic didn't make me fat. The pandemic did not make me gain the weight that I gained. My attitude about the pandemic, my mindset during the pandemic caused me to engage in behaviors that resulted in the weight gain. It wasn't the pandemic, it was my response to the pandemic that resulted in specific behaviors, overeating, lack of exercise, that caused me to gain weight during the pandemic. And I'm happy to say that things are going in the reverse now. Thankfully, I'm back at Taekwondo. That's my Taekwondo school's open. The yoga studios are open. The dance studios are open. So I'm able to do the things that I really have always loved to do that have kept me fairly decent over these last years. But it was a really hard pill to swallow for me because I do a lot. Everything that I share in this space in my workshops are things that I do. I don't teach, preach anything that I don't do myself, because I know that the tools that I offer work because they've helped me so much over the years. And so when I had the epiphany, that awakening yesterday, it allowed me to see the gap between where I am in my mindset and where I want to be, or actually where I thought I was, which is always a good thing because I think that life is about growth, it's about learning, it's about evolving, it's about changing. So I don't have an issue with that. I don't even have an issue with the fact that I allowed the pandemic to be a scapegoat. I'm grateful that I had the awareness and that awakening yesterday because I know that there's going to be something else that comes to allow me to test my theory. Right now, it feels as though the pandemic is, we're living with it now. COVID is here, we're living with it, doesn't seem to be going away. We're managing, things are open, people are getting back to life. But, and on this planet, we know that something else is going to come. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe in my lifetime. There will be another circumstance, there will be another happening that tests my ability to continue to move through and tests my ability to really dig into and manage my mindset in such a way that I don't completely fall on the ground, right? That I don't completely just fall out and have to continuously start over. So I realized the ego uses circumstances. We use circumstances, the pandemic. We use other people's behaviors, right? If we're in a bad relationship, or if our relationship is going through a tough spot, it's the other person's fault. If we're having problems at work, it's the other person's fault. That's one way, one of the many ways, the most common ways that our ego, so that we don't have to take responsibility for ourselves, so that we don't have to look at our mindset, so that we don't have to look at our behaviors, so we don't have to make real hard changes. It's always easier to blame somebody else. And whenever I'm in a situation where I feel like I am having a problem with somebody or something is going down, the first thing I do is look at myself. I didn't do it with the pandemic. That's what I should have done. Because I realized, again, the pandemic didn't make me fat. It was the circumstances. And it was a happening. But I was responsible for my behavior and my response to the happening. And instead of digging in and doing that, because it was hard for a lot of people. I didn't suffer. I'm not saying that I suffered, because there are people who really suffered during this pandemic. I didn't suffer now. Um, in retrospect, compared to what other people have gone through, I had it pretty easy. But it did challenge me. My routines were broken. I was challenged about my hopes, my dreams, things that I was doing, looking at the work that I do. Is it valuable still? Does it even make a difference? So I was going through it, but not like other people. So I don't want in any way suggest that I was suffering, but I was challenged. And in that time of challenge, I realized that I still leaned on some of I was still doing my prayer. I was still doing my meditation. I was still doing my yoga to the best that I could. But I realized that in those extreme circumstances, where I would have benefited from, what would have benefited me, would have been to dig deeper into my practice, to go deeper even on the days I didn't feel like it, even on the days that it didn't feel like anything was really happening, like when things didn't make sense. I would have, in retrospect, in hindsight, now that I have this awareness, it would have benefited me to go deeper into my practice during those circumstances. And I did go deeper, but I could have gone even more deeply into those things that ground me, and I would have had a different outcome. But instead, what I did, and what I've been doing ever since, although I stopped it yesterday, is saying that it was the pandemic. We have a tendency to use outside circumstances and people to distract us and deflect from our own responsibility, and also to keep us from having to deal with uncomfortable things. In this particular case with me, it was the pandemic. That was my scapegoat. That was the circumstances that I used to justify the behaviors that I did. I didn't have to do what I did. There are people who lost weight who got even more fit during the pandemic because of their mindset. So that's one way that the ego uses a circumstances as a scapegoat to keep us from focusing on what we should focus on. Another way that we do it is it keeps us from focusing on areas in our life that we should grow. Here's another example. A good friend of mine, we had this conversation over the weekend. She went to visit her former place of employment and noticed that all the black folks that had been working there were gone, and that it was brought to her attention that it was done systematically. Now, is that a problem? Absolutely. Is it a problem she should have been concerned with? Absolutely. But as we were talking, I also know that this is a person who has a thriving business, that if she focused on that business, will be wildly successful, because this sister is bad, one of the baddest girls out here. And I know without question that if she turned her attention to her business, that business would thrive beyond what she probably even thinks is possible at this moment. But because that's a place where she's not comfortable growing, which is fine, it makes sense, we all have those things, it's easier for her to turn her attention to something else. So in this case, she turned her eyes from her own business to these other people's business. And I asked her, the people that got pushed out, did they call you when they were getting pushed out? Did they call you to rally? Did they call you for support? No. Most of them took a package and bounced and went on to the next thing. So although it's problematic, if the people who were being directly impacted by it, who had the wherewithal to call you, didn't call you, if the people who were directly impacted by it, who had the wherewithal to collectively rally against it, didn't do it, what are you doing over there when you should be over here minding your business, literally? And we had a really great conversation. That's the kind of conversation we have. You need to get you a friend like this girl, because this is how we talk to each other. We hold each other accountable. She holds my foot up to the fire. I hold her up to the fire, so we make sure we're going in the right direction. But my point is, that's another example of how the ego, the savior ego, was going to step in to handle these people over here to keep her from doing what she needed to do over there. What about you? You doing that? Are you doing that at work? Blaming other people? Looking at other people, focusing on what other people are doing so you don't have to focus on where you may be deficient in your skill set in the job? Are you doing that in your relationship, focusing on what the other person is or is not doing or keeps doing or won't stop doing, so you don't have to focus on what it is that you are doing to contribute to wherever this relationship has found itself? Are you doing it at the workplace? Do you have to go from job to job to job, leave place to place, go from this place to that place because everybody at the place that you just left behind was against you? Are you blaming them instead of stopping and picking up the mirror and asking yourself, why is it that you continuously keep getting run out of place after place after place after place after place? That's the ego. That's the ego using circumstances and other people and other situations and happenings to distract you from the gap between where you are and where you need to be with your state of mind, with your mindset, to have a better outcome, to have more peace in your life, to have more joy in your life, to have more happiness in your life, right? We all do it. I did. I'm telling you, I told the pandemic. Pandemic made me fat. Oh, come on, Muadi, really? It was your mindset in the pandemic. It was the behaviors in response to the pandemic that got me to gain the weight. And I'm so grateful for this revelation because it actually excites me. I'm a little annoyed with myself because, I'm a life coach. I'm supposed to do a little better. But I have the awareness and I am doing better. I think that we need to really start to think about the extent to which we spend time blaming other people, circumstances, happenings for what's going on in our lives and not taking accountability. And you've got to watch out for the ego. This is not a condemnation. This is not a judgment, because I suffer from it too. We're all in this together. But let's take the time this week to bring some awareness to where we are allowing the ego. Who have we enlisted? Who have we put in the space of the scapegoat in our lives and whatever it is that we're dealing with, so that we don't have to deal with the truth of the fact that we are responsible for our behaviors and we are responsible for the mindset that helped to create or exacerbate the circumstances in which we now find ourselves. Stop using scapegoats to distract you from what you need to do to turn things around, to create a life that you love and that loves you back. Stop allowing your ego to use your job, your spouse, your coworkers, the rain, the sky, the weather, to use it as a scapegoat to keep you from doing what it is that you need to do, which is the thing that you should be doing, which is to pick up the mirror, turn around and mind your business. Ask yourself, what can I do to turn this around? What behaviors do I need to change? Well, how do I need to shift my mindset? How do I need to shift my energy? How do I have to maybe shift my perspective so I can look at this thing differently to have a different outcome? You're the only person. You hold the key to your salvation. You hold the key to your liberation. You hold the key to your healing. And when you heal yourself and you clean up your energy, you take responsibility for yourself and get yourself on track, I'm promising you, the people around you start to either fall in line or they fall off. The circumstances around you either pull together or somehow a way is made. But in order for that to happen, you have to be willing to take responsibility and stop using other people's circumstances, happenings as scapegoats, as distractions, to turn your head in a direction where it shouldn't be looking, where you should be looking in the mirror. All things start in the mirror. Your healing begins in the mirror. The end to your suffering begins in the mirror. Your prosperity begins in the mirror. By looking at yourself and stop using other people and circumstances to blame, right? To distract from the role that you played in designing the suffering that you're experiencing right now. So as we go forward this week, I'm raising my hand because I'm talking to myself too. I was not pleased with myself yesterday. I feel better today, but I was like, Muadi, you blame the pandemic? Come on, girl, really? Like, for real? I was not pleased. But I feel better now because now I'm taking responsibility. And in taking the responsibility, there's a freedom that comes with that. There's a power that comes with that. So I'm kind of hyped today. Yesterday, not so much. But today, I'm a little bit more hyped. So that's it. This week, as you go forward, set an intention that you are not going to keep blaming other people for the problems that you are experiencing. That you are not going to keep blaming other people for the status of where you are at work, at home, or in life. Stop using things outside of yourself as a scapegoat to escape the reality of what's going on within you that is causing what you see outside of you. All right? That's it. I hope this was helpful to you. I was talking to my niece. She said, sometimes, Auntie Muadi, I help other people because it helps me to hear it, because it helps me know how much I've learned it. So in this space, I appreciate you all for indulging me, because this helps me. I don't know if it helps you, but it sure helps me to hear this and be reminded of it, because I'm jazzed right now. I hope you're jazzed too. All right? Y'all have a good week. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.